Hi, I'm Boston Smith, and I am a student at Providence Hall High School. I realize my school is not very well known to the public. I tell people I go to the school on the hill, and usually people know what I'm talking about, but that's pretty much it. I decided to take it upon myself to answer the question, what is Providence Hall? To find out, I gathered interviews from multiple different people, including students and teachers. To start, I went to talk to one of the founders, Aaron Preston, and this is the interview right here. So what was your vision when you founded Providence Hall?
There were several of us that were involved in the founding of Providence Hall. The way a charter school is founded is an application is written to the state charter board that says here's the vision that we would like to have for the school. So the people who actually wrote that charter or that document were Paige Anderson, Lori Compton, and Emily Vasica. And all of them, Paige, who was the original brainchild, the person who came up with the idea for the charter, left the first year. Emily left, I believe, the second or third year, and then Lori left right about that time too. So they all left fairly early on. What they were originally founding was an elementary school, and it was based on why I became involved too, which is Channing Hall, which is an international baccalaureate school in Draper, I believe it is. The way we all became involved is Paige went over to Channing Hall, tried to get her firstborn, who was still a baby, into the school, realized that there was this lottery thing and not everybody could get into the school, and decided she wanted to build a school near where she lived, which is Harriman, and that had the same concept, International Baccalaureate. At the same time, I was applying for my son, Oliver, who's now 14, to get into Channing Hall, and through random chance, I ended up in the British Virgin Islands on the back of a sailboat with Elena Goll, who was the founder of Channing Hall. At the same time, I found out that Oliver didn't get into Channing Hall because it was too full. And so I came home from this sailing trip where Elena had spent the entire week trying to convince me to start a charter school in Harriman, going, that's just crazy, why would I do that? And I had been planning to do it and didn't. I came home read in the paper that Paige had just been approved for an IB charter school in Providence Hall, and I called her, and within about 2 weeks of when the charter was approved, I became involved in working with the rest of the team in starting the building, starting the contracts, hiring the people, putting together the curriculum, everything else that would be necessary to start the elementary school. So we started the elementary school. It took about 2 years worth of work to build the building. I oversaw construction of the building, and we all worked on hiring of the administration and the staff. The first principal was Mark Johnson at the elementary. And let's see, who else is still there? Jody Lusty was the curriculum coordinator, and Kelly Mattingly was the elementary counselor. And all of them were interviewed for their jobs right where I'm sitting right now, because this is where we conducted the interviews. Also involved was Robert Anger. He was the treasurer that we enlisted about a year after that to make sure all of our budget and numbers and everything worked out, because if you don't get the money right, you don't get anything right. So we started this school in 2008, and as an International Baccalaureate elementary. And a few years after we started, we realized that the students we were sending back into the Jordan district were being trained in a very different way, and they were regressing, which means that they were losing some of what we had taught them. So the idea we all had in starting it was to have students learn to think for themselves, learn to take a concept, and then learn to do something with it, as opposed to direct instruction, which is repeat after me. What's 2 plus 2? 2 plus 2 equals 4. Everybody repeat after me. We were starting with this concept of, okay, here's 4 Cheerios. What combinations make 4? And it's a much more complex answer, and that's very simplistic, but the whole program was based on that. The reason that the International Baccalaureate was important was because it was a framework that would make us be consistent with that idea. And as we sent the students back from the elementary into the Jordan district, they were losing the advantages they had of the inquiry-based education we were providing at the elementary. So we came up with this idea of starting the junior high to be the next place that they would go. And at the time we were in negotiations with the Jordan district to form their own international baccalaureate high school program, and so that became what we were trying to do, is to prepare students through an IB program all the way to high school, and then Jordan would have an IB program to send them to after that. Well, that's when I went from being the board chair, which I had been for about 3 years, to coming on staff and overseeing the schools, mostly at first building the junior high building and then hiring the staff for that, and then eventually building the high school building after we realized that Jordan wasn't going to be having an IB program. We built the high school to have an international baccalaureate program all the way K through 12.
Why was the name Providence Hall chosen?
That is the silliest thing. So it was before they had even submitted the application, and they were just trying to come up with a name for a school, because part of the application is you have to have a name for the school. And Paige and Lori and they had come up with various names that all were a little bit religious sounding, and nothing quite fit. They had Hall, they wanted to use Hall because Channing Hall was what they were very closely working after, and we kind of had a partnership with Channing Hall, and so they wanted to have Hall. And as they were bouncing around all these names, Lori Compton's husband Dave said, what about Providence Hall, meaning good luck, goodwill, God's wishes, however you want to interpret Providence, but Providence Hall. So basically Good Things Hall, right? And that's how the name became, and that's how it stuck. And we just, even though nobody was ever really all that committed to the name, it just stuck and nobody really cared to change it. I didn't leave. I made them fire me. The two remaining founders who were on the board, Lori Compton and Rob Anker, along with some of the staff that were new, we began having, there's a lot to that story, but we began having very big differences about what direction the school should go in. And I was the superintendent and was in charge of implementing everything across the school, and some of the new people we had brought in had very different ideas about what they wanted the school to be. And Lori and Rob had his own ideas, and Lori didn't say a whole lot, I guess. I don't know, you'd probably have to ask them. But at some point we hit an impasse, and I said I'm not going to budge on what it is that I'm here for and what I want. And I could have left. I didn't. I made them fire me on principle because I wanted them to. I didn't want to not give up my principle of what I wanted the school to be. Rob left under whatever circumstances he left on, I'm not quite sure, very shortly after they fired me, and then Lori has since left the school too, so there are no original founders left. So nobody who was involved from the beginning is still there at all, which is, I don't know if that's sad or if it's a chance to start over. For me, I went immediately into a law practice. So I was an attorney before I went and worked with Providence Hall. I used to work for the Securities and Exchange Commission, and then I was the regional manager for a legal publisher for a few years before I quit to stay home and start Providence Hall. Now I am one of 3 partners who works with Layer Education Law, which is an education law practice. And so we represent a lot of the districts and a lot of the charter schools throughout the state. About a third of the districts in the state and about a third of the charter schools in the state. Ironically, Channing Hall is one of my clients, Jordan District is one of my clients, but Providence Hall is not. So, but among other things, I work with schools to help with student issues, special education issues, startup of schools, construction. One of the things you probably don't know is I oversaw construction for other schools during the time I was working at Providence Hall, and so I've now built or overseen construction on 7 schools from scratch, and 4 other ones where I've done substantial modifications of existing buildings to become schools. So I've built some schools, and then the other thing that I do is a lot of legislative work to help get laws passed for improved funding, improved laws related to Utah education. And so right now I'm involved in the Utah legislature working on a lot of things to help improve education at the statewide level. And that's what I do now. So I went from doing a whole lot for one school or with one school to getting to work with schools and school districts throughout the state, which is really fun too.
A big part of Providence Hall's identity is International Baccalaureate. But what is IB?
IB is an international program that focuses on the whole student, and they have 3 different programs. Starting kindergarten through 5th grade, we have PYP, 6th grade through 10th grade, MYP, and in 11th and 12th grade, there's an option to do the diploma program. And the whole emphasis is on student-directed instruction, so inquiry, that students find what interests them and go into lifelong learning with that concept. And also we want to emphasize the whole student, so we're worried about their well-being, emotional and social, and so we like them to be involved in a lot of community service activities, as well as a lot of reflection upon what they want to do in the future, but also how they learn themselves. So that's the basis. So a little bit of academic, but also making the student more well-rounded.
The International Baccalaureate is the program that we chose. For me, Socratic-based teaching methodology, which basically means here's something to think about, what do you do with it, was the way that I learned in law school. And so for me, what was important was the Socratic method. Inquiry-based instruction is another way of saying that. And the International Baccalaureate program is a program that was founded after World War II by some educators who were trying to figure out a way to teach students inquiry, to try and teach students to figure out the world for themselves. So you have to remember what was happening after World War II. All of these sides in Europe had been bitterly opposed to each other, and the theme, or motto I guess, of International Baccalaureate is others with their differences may also be right, which is actually a really huge concept if you think about it and how at war these people had been. And what they were trying to do is come up with a way of teaching children from whatever background to start thinking for themselves and start coming up with how can we learn to get along even though we disagree on things. And they created an entire framework that has the primary years program, the middle years program, and the diploma program. And that's taught around the world. I visited Europe 3 years ago, and I went to International Baccalaureate schools all across France and England and saw them learning very similar things to what we teach at Providence Hall. It's very common pretty much everywhere except America, but there are International Baccalaureate schools here. For me, it was important to have the IB framework in place, to not just have the idea of inquiry-based instruction, but to actually have an International Baccalaureate authorized school, because that forces us to have reviews and to hit certain levels of teaching and consistency, so that even after I was gone and the other founders were gone, we would still have a consistent vision. There are 118 charter schools in Utah, and quite a few of them started with one vision and ended up with another vision. And so what we were trying to create was something that would last past us.
Another big part of Providence Hall is the teachers. They're the ones who teach the curriculum and help the students get their education. So I've gathered some interviews from some teachers here at Providence. Here's what they have to say.
I decided to work here. I was offered the job and was excited that it was a small school with a focus on international mindedness. Because I'm also certified to teach history, I was really excited to look at mathematics from a historical perspective, just as well as an international perspective. So cool focus at this school.
I was offered a job here